On June 14, 2017, in Alexandria, Virginia, a man opened fire on several Republican members of Congress and their staffers, who were practicing for the annual congressional baseball game for charity, scheduled for the next day. A 10-minute shootout ensued between the assailant, identified as left-wing activist James Thomas Hodgkinson of Belleville, Illinois, and officers from the Capitol Police and Alexandria Police. Hodgkinson shot 4 people, including House Majority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana, a congressional aide, a lobbyist, and one of the Capitol Police officers assigned to protect Scalise. One of the officers shot Hodgkinson, who later died from his wounds. Scalise was the first sitting member of Congress to have been shot since Arizona Representative Gabrielle Giffords was shot in 2011. Scalise and a lobbyist who was shot multiple times are in critical condition after undergoing surgery at the MedStar Washington Hospital Center in nearby Washington, D.C. Background. The shooting took place at Eugene Simpson Stadium Park in Alexandria, Virginia, near Washington, D.C., where 20 to 25 Republican congressmen gathered to practice for the congressional baseball game, which was to be held the next day, on June 15. The bipartisan game is a charity event, first played in 1909, that has been held annually at Nationals Park since 2008. Republican House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, Senators Rand Paul and Jeff Flake, and Representatives Roger Williams, Chuck Fleischmann, Ron DeSantis, Trent Kelly, Mo Brooks, Brad Wenstrup, Rodney Davis, Jeff Duncan, and Joe Barton, the team's manager, were among those at the practice. Prior to the game, the Republicans held practices at the same time and place each morning. After leaving the practice and before the shooting, Representatives DeSantis and Duncan were approached by a man who asked whether it was Republicans or Democrats on the field. Duncan is reported to have replied that it was the Republican team. DeSantis later told reporters that both he and Duncan believe that individual was the same individual police have identified as the attacker. 3 Capitol Police were present at the practice to protect Scalise. Because of his leadership position, Scalise merits a security detail assigned to protect him. Shooting. The team began its practice around 6:30 a.m. EDT. The practice game had been underway for about half an hour when the assailant began firing. According to Capitol Hill Police, he was armed with a 7.62 mm semi-automatic rifle and a 9 mm handgun, both of which he had apparently purchased legally. The Capitol Police officers had been posted behind the first base dugout. When Hodgkinson opened fire, 2 of the officers, David Bailey and Crystal Griner, rushed onto the field to protect the politicians. The 3rd Capitol Police officer, Henry Cabrera, took aim at the shooter from behind the first base dugout, while the shooter ducked behind the 3rd base dugout. At 7:09 a.m., the Alexandria Police received a 911 report of shots fired. 2 police officers arrived within 3 minutes and also engaged Hodgkinson in a gunfight. Witnesses estimated between 50 to 100 shots were fired during the shootout, which lasted about 10 minutes before Hodgkinson was shot by a Capitol Police officer. Scalise, who was at second base when the shooting started, was shot in the hip and tried to drag himself off the field. While the shooting was still going on, Rep. Mo Brooks used his belt as a tourniquet to help stop bleeding for a staffer who had been shot in the calf. After the shooting ended, Brooks and Rep. Brad Wenstrup, a podiatrist and combat surgeon, were able to help Scalise. Several witnesses said their lives were saved by the presence of the Capitol Police, who were there because of Scalise's position as the majority whip. The Capitol Police immediately engaged Hodgkinson and kept him pinned down, preventing him from continuing to fire on the unarmed baseball players. Rep. Davis and Sen. Rand Paul separately said that but for the presence of the officers the incident would have been a massacre. Injuries. Scalise was shot in the hip and was evacuated by medical helicopter to a local hospital, where he underwent surgery. He was initially reported to be in stable condition with non-life-threatening injuries. However, it was reported later that day that he was in critical condition. MedStar Washington Hospital Center later reported that after the bullet struck Scalise's hip, it traveled across his pelvis, fracturing bones, injuring internal organs, and causing severe bleeding. He received multiple blood transfusions, and underwent an additional procedure to stop the bleeding. On June 15, he remained in critical condition after undergoing a 3rd surgery. Matt Mika, a Tyson Foods lobbyist, was shot multiple times in the chest. He suffered injuries to his lungs and sternum as well as broken ribs. Mika was reported to be in critical condition following surgery. He is a former baseball player and former legislator legislative assistant for Congressman Tim Walberg and Dave Camp, both Republican representatives from Michigan. The day after the shooting, Mika was reportedly upgraded from critical to serious condition. David Bailey and Crystal Griner, two of the Capitol Police officers assigned to protect Scollise, were both injured. Griner was shot in the ankle and was hospitalized in what was described as good condition. Bailey was treated and released after sustaining a minor wound not caused by gunfire. Zach Barth, a legislative aide to Rep. Roger Williams of Texas, was shot in the calf. Williams said Barth is expected to make a full recovery. He was treated at the hospital and released. Williams himself was not shot, but injured his ankle while jumping into a dugout during the attack. Williams, a former minor league baseball player who is the coach of the Republican team, plans to travel to Texas after the game to have his doctor look at the injury. Perpetrator == Police identified the shooter as James Thomas Hodgkinson, 66, whose last permanent residence was in Belleville, Illinois. He was severely injured in the shootout and transported to George Washington University Hospital, where he died from his injuries. The St. Clair County Sheriff said that deputies had been called to Hodgkinson's house about half a dozen times in the past 20 years. The most serious was in March 2017, when a neighbor called police to complain about Hodgkinson firing a rifle at trees in their residential neighborhood. The officers who responded checked Hodgkinson's gun permit, then advised him not to shoot in the area, but did not conduct an arrest. Hodgkinson owned a home inspection business that had an expired license at the time of the shooting. His wife still lives in their Belleville home. Investigators believe that he had been living in a van in Alexandria for about 6 weeks at the time of the shooting. Witnesses say he often parked the van near the ball field and YMCA, and was a frequent visitor to the YMCA. Hodgkinson had campaigned for Bernie Sanders during the 2016 United States presidential election, and was described by a fellow campaigner in Iowa as a quiet guy, very mellow, very reserved and a passionate progressive, and showed no signs of violence or malice toward others. Republican Congressman Mike Bost, who represents the shooter's home district, said Hodgkinson had contacted his office 10 times, but never with any threats, only anger. On May 22, 2017, Hodgkinson wrote, "Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and co." Above his repost of a Change.org petition demanding the legal removal of Trump and Vice President Mike Pence for treason. He belonged to a Facebook group called Terminate the Republican Party. The FBI, which took over the investigation, said on June 14 that it was too early in the investigation to ascribe a motive for the shootings. It put out a request to the public for information on Hodgkinson. Reactions. The attack drew a bipartisan response as many politicians immediately sent out notes expressing their anger over the shooting, recovery wishes for the injured, and gratitude for the police. News of the shooting and injuries quickly reached the Democratic congressional baseball players, who were at their own practice when it occurred. They gathered together in the dugout to pray for the injured. President Donald Trump issued a statement saying, "We are deeply saddened by this tragedy. Our thoughts and prayers are with the members of Congress, their staffs, Capitol Police, first responders, and all others affected." President Trump and his wife Melania visited Scollise, Crystal Griner, and her wife in the hospital. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan, RY, addressed the House of Representatives before their afternoon session and said, "An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us." Members of both parties rose in applause to his remarks. Former Representative Gabrielle Giffords, DAZ, who survived being shot in the head at a constituent event in 2011, sent a tweet, "My heart is with my former colleagues, their families and staff, and the U.S. Capitol Police, public servants and heroes today and every day." Hours after the shooting, Sen. Bernie Sanders, IVT, responded on the Senate floor to news that the gunman was a campaign volunteer for his 2016 presidential run. Sanders said, "I have just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign. I am sickened by this despicable act. Let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Real change can only come about through nonviolent action, and anything else runs counter to our most deeply held American values." 2017 Congressional Baseball Game Congressional leaders announced Wednesday afternoon that the Congressional Baseball Game, which is played for charity, would take place as scheduled the next day and would not be postponed because of the attack. The annual game usually attracts a crowd of about 10,000 people, but by 24 hours after the shooting, they had sold more than 20,000 tickets, bringing in more more than $1 million for charity. David Bailey, one of the two Capitol Police officers injured in the shootout, threw out the first pitch. Bailey, who relied on crutches because of the injury, received a standing ovation from the sold-out crowd in Nationals Park. The Democrat team defeated the Republican team 11-2, but lent the trophy to the Republicans until Scalise recovers. See also 1954 United States Capitol shooting incident. List of United States Congress members killed or wounded in office. References external links media related to 2017 congressional baseball shooting at Wikimedia Commons.